In the fall of 1987, local news channel WSB TV2 of Atlanta, Georgia, was attempting to fill a scheduling gap in their Sunday morning lineup. After a few solicitations by their local business owners, they decided to allow the young Reverend Marley Satches to take the available hour block to do a religiously themed show. It premiered October 18th with a little promotion. The show was a standard religious fare and it consisted of the Reverend sitting in a simple chair reading passages from the Bible into the camera and discussing the interpretation and significance to our modern day-to-day life. The show received reasonable number of reviews and continued to be shown into the early December. It was then the studio that received extremely strange complaints from the viewers of words of light from the Reverend Marley Satch. The calls were from the women and women only, who vaguely referred to the uncomfortable feelings they had at the very specific intervals during the program. They described feelings of nausea, back pain, dizziness, and blurred vision. These callers, for no discriminable reason, were convinced that it was the viewing of this program that was causing these symptoms. It was later determined after 3 weeks of complaints that these feelings were happening at roughly 12 minutes intervals during the course of the program. The small studio staff checked all recording equipment, both audio and video, and found nothing faulty. When the Reverend was made aware of these incidents, he merely shrugged and stated critically that some can't handle the voice of God. The head of the studio, at a loss to explain to all these complaints, decided to continue running the program. By February, the viewership had dropped sharply and decided to pull the plug on the show. The studio had figured it would be more prudent to spend as much time as possible on the news story that then had other two local news and networks a buzz. The miscarriage epidemic, starting sometime in November, the number of healthy pregnant women miscarrying the Atlanta metropolitan area reached over 300. The CDC would find no discriminable cause of this for this terrifying occurrence. The Reverend took the show's cancellation with what could be described as abject indifference. When informed, he made no protest, merely nodded almost knowingly that he left the studio after the last episode was filmed without so much as a word and dropped off the face of the earth. No one had ever heard from him again, not his former congregation or any members of the church. The studio moved on, filling the shot with an infomercial and continued to the miscarriage story. A year and a half later, an intern at the WSB studios recovered the tapes of the Words of Light and began going through them in an attempt to find stock footage for an upcoming piece the station was doing on the impact religion had on the city. The Atlanta incident, as the miscarriage epidemic became known in medical journals, petered out 3 months later after the studios canceled Reverend Satch's show, and already had begun to fade from the public coincidences. As the intern went through the tapes, he accidentally made a disturbing discovery about the footage. While attempting to stop one recording at 10 minutes and 45 seconds, he mistakenly jammed the fast-forward button. While the footage was whizzed by, he attempted to pry up the button with a screwdriver. Just as he succeeded, the tape stopped at 32 minutes and 1 second. The intern actually fell out of the chair when he looked at what was the frozen on the screen. The image of a badly decomposed, severed head filling up the entire frame. After he collected himself, he moved the film back a few frames, then forward, and realized his mind was not playing tricks on him. He began through the rest of the recording and soon discovered exactly the 12-minute interval as the image would appear in one frame. Thinking it was some practical joke, he began playing on the new guy. He presented to one of the film technicians, ready to be mocked. The technician was just as puzzled as him. No one had touched the footage since the cancellation of the show. After the show had closed for the night, the intern was convinced the tech to help him go through all the tapes of the Word of Light. They discovered that every episode had this very same horrifyingly anomaly. They also realized that as the show progressed, the image became more disgusting as maggots began to eat away the loose flesh, and the pieces of hair and skin seemed to have fallen off exponentially. The tech made it clear to the intern that they were going to see that they were seeing was technically impossible since the film itself showed absolutely no signs of splicing, and he had been at every filming of the show and knew of no time when this image has been inserted into the frame. All of this was presented to the studio head, who, fearing who was some kind of black backlash over allowing this to get on air, ordered all the tapes to be destroyed. He told the intern in tech that he had no interest in knowing who did it at this point. Only that ... covering their collective asses is all that's important now. He demanded that they mention this one to no one. The tech easily moved on. He remembered the incident as a darkly funny personal anecdote, but the intern wouldn't let it go. He made copies of as many of the tapes he could before they were wiped and took it and see if he could find anything else on that in them that maybe who did this or why they would. A week later, he attempted to rope the tech into helping him again, saying that he believed they discovered something even more disturbing than the images itself. When the single frames were edited together in chronological order, the head's mouth appeared to be moving as it was trying to form words. The tech, fearing for his job, told him to get rid of the copies and not talk about it again. A week later, police responded to a 911 call by an elderly woman in one of the Atlanta suburbs at the dusk. She had heard of horrible noises coming from her next-door neighbor's house where a young couple lived. She told their emergency responder that the wife was pregnant and she was terrified that something had happened. When the officers arrived on the streets 20 minutes later, they found no light on the windows and just a front door ajar. They moved in slowly and made their way into the living room. Inside, they found a young woman dead with her abdomen slashed open. The wound was jagged and a trail of blood left from the body to the couch on the far end of the room. There sat her husband, the studio intern, naked, the corpse of his unborn child at his feet, dying in his hands. He held the rusty piece of metal sliding he had used to his gut to his pregnant wife. The television was on in an 18-second loop of the silent footage of a decomposing head mouthing some unintelligible words. The story at the police precinct to this day goes that the intern kept saying under his breath over and over again as they led him away, "The light of a God calls them."